Hey all, so decided to do a bit of a different segment as well, and thought to look at a couple of retro distros. Now, of course, not all of these are Arch based, but it is sometimes always interesting to know where we're going forward, is to sometimes look at where we've come from. And at least on the Linux distro side of the world, we've moved very forward in the last 10, 15, heck, even 20 years. So I thought, hey, wouldn't it be interesting to take a look at some of these older distros? And I decided to actually start off with a distro that really changed things back in the day, which of course was Warthog or Ubuntu 4.10. So Ubuntu 4.10 came out many, many, many years ago. To be precise, it came out in 2004. Can you believe it? And one of the very important things about it was it really changed desktop Linux at the time. So what I'm going to do is create a virtual machine and walk through it, and just to take a look in case you've never actually seen it. So let's go new, and just going to call it Ubuntu 32-bit. I'll just give it 2 gigs of memory. It's pretty fine. 10 gig to adjust. So one of the important things is, because this is pretty old, is to make sure that the hard drive comes up as a IDE drive. Otherwise it's not going to work. And just remove it as a SATA controller there. And go OK. And let's start. So of course, normal Ubuntu. Sorry about the resolution. But as you can see here, was more of the traditional Debian installer or CLI. Just running through a couple of these examples, but of course none of that fancy GUI installations that came out in later versions or what you get today. Although at the time, of course, it was still a lot easier to install as some other distros, which I'll show you at some point. I'll just call it Ubuntu VM, and it will just do its quick detection of everything it needs to do. I'm just going to let it erase the entire disk and let it write as ext4. And as you'll see pretty quickly, it actually installs the base system at quite a speed. I suppose this is the advantage of a system that came out in 2004. Yeah, kind of hard to believe how long ago this was, and how popular Ubuntu made the desktop Linux. You must remember back then, Linux on the desktop wasn't as popular as it was now, and it sure as heck wasn't as easy then to use as it is now, I can assure you. There were other distros at the time. Red Hat was a big contender. SUSE. All of those were also making desktop variants, but of course they were still almost more focused on the server side. As you can see here, it's finished the first stage. So I'm just going to quickly remove the optical drive, which is actually done automatically, and hit enter, and it should reboot into a new system. Okay, grub 1.5, and as you can see, still in the days of kernel 2.68. So that really does take us back quite a bit. So just let the install carry on. Okay, so as you can see, the first little bit of configuration again was still CLI based, and even from originally, Ubuntu was very pseudo operational and disabled the root account. Enter full name, so of course gosh, enter an extremely strong password. Do we want to download additional software updates from the internet? Well, we normally would, but of course not now. I doubt the repos are even still available anymore. So now what it's doing is just pre unpacking additional files that it had. And also, of course, back then, uh, if you wanted Ubuntu, you could just go to the website and you could request free. Back then, it started with CDs, eventually DVDs. That Canonical would send to you free of charge. It was a really great initiative back then to spread Linux on the desktop. I know there's been a lot of talk and controversy in recent years about Ubuntu, but it is important to remember that if it wasn't for Ubuntu back then, we probably wouldn't be in the current state of the Linux desktop that we are now. Um, Ironically, I myself, when I first used Ubuntu, I first tried with 4.10 Warthog when I was a kid, but it wouldn't boot on my hardware back then. It didn't support my Intel graphics on my onboard machine. I think it was an old Celeron back in the day. And the first time I was actually able to use Ubuntu was from 5.04. And through all the years, used it, didn't use it. But yeah, the running joke at this time was with old Ubuntu was Ubuntu is for people that can't actually install Debian. So it was this running joke. I'm just going to select 60 by 200 as a resolution. It should hopefully display a little bit better on the screen here. Shouldn't be too much longer before we can go through the desktop. This is long before Ubuntu even did anything with Unity, so it came with GNOME or GNOME 2, if I remember correctly. Just let us finish setting this up. I will admit though, it's actually it was more difficult than I thought to actually find the disk, an ISO, so I had to track it down, but fortunately Ubuntu still has the old CD archives of their distro, which a lot of other distros don't have anymore. Okay. See, it's still busy registering its documentation. Okay, setup is complete. We may now log in. I really hope the GUI is going to launch. Yes, it looks like we're in some form of business here. And the old Ubuntu login. And the old soundtrack. So, of course, one of the crazy issues here is getting the mouse to work. It's actually a bit of a pain. So, let's see. I'm going to have to use the keyboard. So, you can see an earlier edition of Firefox, all talking about Ubuntu 4.10. Just bear in mind here, I'm not that used to using only a keyboard, especially in an old edition of Ubuntu. Okay, I'm just trying to actually get to help. Oh well, just okay. Now, of course, I can't find that web page, and let's see what else I can do here to get the menu down. Well, of course, original Ubuntu had the old, very brown theme, and Ubuntu carried that theme for many, many, many years. And of course, the mouse acceleration not working yet. I just want to. So we could at least get to all the different preferences. So you could just have basic clock preferences, which was easier to get to. And I'm just gonna go here and hopefully I can at least get the application window open. Or fix the mouse. Okay, let me just drag it down here at the bottom. See if there's anything else I've missed. Okay, well, at least we can get to the point of opening a terminal. So we can check a couple of settings here as well. So if we were to check its original memory usage, used 879 megs. It's actually not too much back in the day. A little hefty, heftier than I would have thought. And of course, that kernel, 2.6. And this was released Tuesday, October 12th, 2004 for the i86 GNU / Linux platform. As you can see here, let me just go to root and show you what's here. So all pretty much standard directories, media, mount, root. Really not too much is from that perspective of the Linux partition system hasn't actually changed, or should I say the layout. As you can see here, it used a whole 1.5 gigs of hard disk space, which was really not much. And of course for this install, so okay, I'm just sorry for the inconvenience here. Just trying to see if I can get anywhere with these. Okay, I'm just going to pause the video in the meantime, and 4, 3, 2, 1. And I'm back, and I managed to fix the mouse issue. And the way I fixed it was disabling mouse integration from input. So as we can see here, accessories, all pretty much stock standard. Even the GIMP from back in the day. I know someone's going to be wondering what version of Firefox it was back then. Still 0.93. Well, that takes us back. Internet, game, evolution, mail, XChat, even still included a CD player back then. Music player, Office. So we can just go to Open Office and 112. Yeah, even long before the split between Open Office and LibreOffice. New login, addition info about Ubuntu, which goes to a web page that can't load anymore. And if we look at system config, you could change your device manager, login, screen resolution, time and date, users and groups, and some normal desktop preferences. So, for example, your theme. So if you didn't like human and you wanted something like, I don't know, let's go mist, you could just hit that and it would very quickly, change your setting there. Pretty convenient for back then. And file management options. So as you can see, it did use the old GNOME 2 background, or the GNOME 2 environment, which eventually of course got replaced with Unity, and then back to on GNOME 3. So yeah, pretty, not much else really to write home about. But of course this made things a lot easier for individuals because it was pretty quick in the day. You could get up and running pretty quickly, and you could work. And of course, if you wanted to install software, it already had apt back in the day. And of course, you could use Synaptic as well. And you could just choose your default media player and preferences over here. And this is how normal tools used to look in the day. 2.8.1. Pretty simple. We've definitely come a long way in a short amount of time. So yeah, there's not much else really to show you here. So I'm going to stop the video and hope you enjoyed looking back in time. Bye for now.